Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm John Lazarus with Stories Matter and D&D Publishing. Nobody likes a liar in real life. Or at least we don't like people who lie in order to win sexual harassment civil suits against our publishing companies. But in fiction, it can be thrilling to get inside the head of someone who may not be totally honest. And if you think about it, there's no reason a person telling a story must be honest. We tell false stories all the time. About the fish we nearly caught. About the reason we were speeding. About why we said we were at yoga class even though nobody saw us there and the teacher said we haven't attended in weeks. And we even lied to ourselves. Beyond the obvious lies we might tell, for example, that we still have enough hair and muscle tone to bag a Miami 9, human memory is malleable and susceptible to manipulation. I once gave a report to police about a drowning body that was riddled with errors and inconsistencies simply because I'd been so distraught. For example, I claimed to have been swimming out to save the man when I had actually been standing on the beach. And I also remembered it being a stranger who drowned, even though in reality, it was a neighbor with whom I'd recently had a big feud. So not only are unreliable narrators true to life, they can provide your story with an uneasy tension. We'll lie our ass off because we can't face an unbearable truth on this edition of Stories Matter. Today's video is brought to you by Trump Coin. In a world that's often unreliable, you need a currency you can trust. And what better way than investing in a crypto coin with the namesake of a man who, though making every single bad decision possible, is pretty much impervious to death. Trump Coin is heavily tied to the assets of the current president, and as this unkillable creature continues to drain the country of wealth and turns Panama, Greenland, and Gaza into profitable centers for business instead of places where real people live, the value of those assets is only going to go up. Visit x.com for more information. We're trained to trust the people who tell us stories. Maybe because story writers remind us of authority figures, like teachers, doctors, or like the men in lab coats who, during a college psychology experiment, convinced me my roommate was a communist spy and got me to shoot him in the head. Don't worry, viewers, the gun turned out to be just filled with air. There are four main types of unreliable narrators. We'll look at each in turn. Picaros are characters who are adept at exaggeration, people like Moll Flanders or Don Quixote. In my novel The Ballad of Ralph Quaid, the titular character claims to have slept with a world-famous celebrity, but over the course of the story, the side characters, piece by piece, work out that it's likely the man actually had sex with a prize show dog. Madmen are characters who are unreliable simply because they've lost their goddamn minds. American Psycho's Patrick Bateman might be the most famous example here. John Stevens, the narrator of Murder on Spirit Airlines, is unreliable because nobody would realistically put a bomb on a Spirit Air flight when there would be nobody on board worth killing. Naifs are narrators who are unreliable because of their youth, inexperience, and naivete. Huckleberry Finn fits this category well. My coming-of-age story, The House on Payne Avenue, fits here because Daniel Clementine sees his social awkwardness and estrangement from his father as a result of his being gay, when the reader can clearly understand it's actually because Daniel won't ever stop talking about how 9/11 was an inside job. Finally, we have our basic liars. These are people who are trying to paint a better picture of themselves and work towards specific goals. These are common people we encounter in our everyday lives. They are our coworkers, our lawyers, our clergymen, our business partners who secretly drug us to increase our productivity and get us to sign agreements handing over the rights to a sizable portion of our books. Agatha Christie novels are filled with this type of person, as are my cult action novels, where the protagonist always seems to have an excuse to kill Comanches, even women and children who are minding their own business, gardening, and basket weaving. Whichever type of unreliable narrator you decide to utilize, here are some helpful tips. Step 1. Give your narrator a reason to be unreliable. There are a lot of things that can make your narrator unreliable. Humbert, for example, is unreliable because he wants to be remembered as an obsessive lover rather than a French person. A childhood profuse with nights spent scrounging for scraps in the fridge to make dinners of relish and tortilla shells taught me that drugs are another thing that can make someone unreliable. Consider making your protagonist a junkie. Or you could tie it to a deep need that the narrator hasn't fulfilled. For example, maybe they're making up a bunch of lies about their life so their YouTube channel isn't boring and pointless like all the other writing advice ones. Step 2. Keep your reader in the dark. but you don't want to give away the game too early. It's better to lull your reader into a false sense of security before the inevitable rug pull. Much like an accountant who doesn't know he's committing tax fraud for your publishing company, it'll be better for everyone if the reader sides with the narrator from the outset. Think about Holden Caulfield in The Catcher in the Rye. Even though there are subtle clues at the beginning that he's unreliable, we're on his side because it's so obvious that everyone else in our lives are phonies, and things would be so much better if someone would shoot the guy who wrote this song. Step 3. Escalate the lies as the narrative progresses. Lies breed more lies. Unless you've got an entire propaganda network to completely rewrite reality for you, your narrator will eventually be outed. Your lies should start small, almost unnoticeable, but they need to get bigger as the story goes on. Let's say, for example, you write a story about a man who kills his neighbor by bashing his head with an oar and dumping him in a lake. Well, you can't start with the narrator getting caught or confessing to the murder. You start with him saying he only went to the beach later in the day to do research for his newest novel. You might only draw the connection between the deceased and the narrator 2/3 of the way into the police novel. Step 4. Use multiple unreliable narrators. Of course, you could go the route of Kurosawa and tell the story from multiple conflicting perspectives, like he did in The Seven Samurai, where we see the same murder unfold from the 7 titular vantage points. The only thing you've got to decide here is there one objective truth, or will your story be more about how an objective truth is essentially unknowable, as an impartial jury of the state of Arizona seems to believe? That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll leave you with this week's This Day in Literary History. See you on the next one.